welcome to Florida House Book Club. Florida House on Capitol Hill is Florida's state embassy, and it's located in Washington, D.C., where Floridians and people who love Florida can stop by and have a glass of orange juice and a cookie while they're visiting the nation's capital. Founded by Ray Childs in 1973, Florida House is owned by the citizens of Florida. We don't take any state money, and we're supported solely by corporate and individual charitable donations. The mission is to connect, celebrate, and champion Florida House, and we feel that the Florida Book Club does this. Each year, the Florida House Book Club features 4 works of varying genres by distinguished authors from across the Sunshine State. And tonight we kick off the 2024 Florida House Book Club program here at San Marco Books and More. It's located in the charming San Marco area of Jacksonville, Florida. You're in for a real treat this evening, and the name of it is Southern Cooking Global Flavors. We're featuring it on Valentine's Day, just in time for you to whip up a delicious meal for your loved one, or maybe buy one as a gift for someone who will appreciate Kenny's fine cooking. Hey, Kenny.
How are you?
All right, you've been cooking for decades and you've earned accolades in the culinary world. You were the youngest chef ever employed by Ritz-Carlton to run a restaurant. That was very exciting. You've been on television cooking shows including Top Chef, Today's Show, CBS Saturday Mornings, and HGTV. Your recipes have been featured in Garden and Gun, Food and Wine, Coastal Living, and O Magazine. In fact, Oprah often employs you as a private chef. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
But around here, he's best known for his restaurant in Springfield called Silky's Chicken and Champagne. So that's just such a yummy title. So anyway, Kenny, welcome, Kenny. Would you like to say anything before we begin, before I start answering?
You know, Jacksonville has been home to me as long as I've been born. I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. My mom brought me down to St. Augustine, where she's from. And I was 3-4 months old, and my great-grandmother, Viola Lewis, actually prayed over me on the porch in St. Augustine. So I've been coming down here since I was born. So this is home. So every time I think about dishes, I think about family settings and gatherings, coming down, watching, fishing with my grandmother and my cousins. I have over 21 first cousins around my age, around the area. So big family. And, so my roots run deep in North Florida.
In North Florida. I have a little picture. This is his great-grandmother holding Kenny when he was 3 months old. Her name was Viola Lewis, and there actually is a cookie named after her in the cookbook. So I thought that's very, very interesting. So how many restaurants have you had in Florida, and what was the first one you opened up?
The first one that I solely opened with my wife at the time was Gilbert's Underground Kitchen. That was in Amelia Island. Prior to that, I was exec chef up in Plainfield, New Jersey, at a country club. And she came, one day she said, you know what, I think you need to open a restaurant. What would it cost? What do you think? And so she was the first one to actually invest and believe in what I could do. And so we put some money together and we opened the first one. It was a turkey restaurant. Didn't spend a lot of money, but we wanted to focus on the food and the quality. And so that was the first one. We then opened up Gilbert Social, which was here in Jacksonville, right off the Southside Boulevard. That was a sister restaurant. We really wanted to focus in on Florida cuisine, and through my lens, through my roots. Being that my mom was born and raised in St. Augustine, I grew up in the Midwest with a Southern mother, the Midwestern father. So the diversity of my palate in dining was based upon the neighborhoods that I was used to frequenting in Cleveland, but then also what my mother would cook whenever she was thinking about home. So we put all those, I put that love into the food in both Underground Kitchen and Social. And we would diversify the options to the point where I would serve collard greens with smoked ham hot pot liquor up in Fernandina, but I did turnip mustard greens that had chunks of turnips with smoked turkey pot liquor in Jacksonville. And a lot of guests were like, oh man, I love the collards, but I know I'm not a big fan of mustard and turnips, so I have to drive to Fernandina to go get the collards. I said, yes, you do. So we wanted to show the diversity. I mean, everyone has a way that they do things, and my mom, it's funny, the Thanksgiving dinner was really a huge foundation of what I cook. It's a bountiful meal, and that actually had 2 or 3 different rice dishes, 2 different types of potatoes, turkey a couple different ways. I mean, and once you learn how to do that, then it's like, man, I want to be able to showcase this in the restaurants, and so that's what I did.
And I think I read that you started cooking the Thanksgiving meal at 11 all by yourself.
I was 11, yes. I started, I scrambled eggs with my mom at the age of 3. I was a very curious kid, and she taught me how to cook, clean, and sew. She didn't have any girls, so she made sure me and my brother were totally self-sufficient. And so that's where the passion was.
Passion started.
Yeah.
In the introduction of your cookbook, you write, cooking is a form of storytelling, and that a country's food culture tells the story of its people and the relationship with place. I love that. What was your first job?
My very first job was cleaning apartments when I was a little kid because I got kicked out of the pool. I was a big swimmer when I was young, and I got kicked out of the pool. And I remember, I always wanted to stay busy. And I went, again, I should not have been working, but I went to everyone knew me, because I was always running around the neighborhood. And so I went to the rental office, this nearby neighborhood where I lived up in Ohio. And I said, I want to work. And what can I do? And they said, oh, well, you can help clean. Is that what you do? I said, yeah. I said, I clean toilets, do whatever. And so I started picking up all these little jobs. And then, so I helped whenever someone would move out of an apartment, I would go in there and I would, when all the older guys would, I'm like 8, 9 years old.
Yeah.
I'm in there making like $2 an hour, and because I knew how to clean a bathroom really well. So that was my first job. And then second one was I started selling candy. My dad he gave me my allowance in candy, and basically he was in sales. He sold insurance. And when I got kicked out of the pool at the same time, he's like, "Oh, what's wrong?" And I told him what happened. He went out to the store, bought like $20 worth of candy, and he came back and said, here's your allowance, go make your money back. And that was my first sales job. And so I would go by the pool with all like Mike and Ike's and lemon heads and Bull Pops. And so I was a candy kid, and I had that. And then my mom taught me how to make we call them chili cups, but you call them honey drippers. Kool-Aid, extra sugar, you would freeze them in Dixie cups, and it was styrofoam, and that way you could peel it away as you're eating it. And I would sell like $1, like 16-ounce chili cups, for the adults and the teenagers, and the 25 cents for like some of the younger kids. And so I've been hustling for a long time.
Well, how about your first job with food?
Food, McDonald's.
McDonald's?
Yeah, first job was McDonald's. I was 15, and I wasn't even allowed to actually cook. Technically, I was able to work as a cashier. You had to be at least 16. So I was on a verge of turning 16. I was about 3 or 4 months away, but I was so I had to cook. That's all I wanted to do. And so I would work the cash register, and then I would go in the back and then flip some burgers and whatever. And then eventually they said, okay, fine, you keep pressing it. So they taught me how to do it, and I mastered everything in the McDonald's. Yeah.
Well, I would think that your ability to clean when you were 8 or 9 would help in the restaurant business.
100%.
You have to keep a great clean kitchen.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
That sounds fun. Well, we were very lucky because Kenny went to culinary school in Pittsburgh, but then he had an apprenticeship with Amelia Island Ritz when you were 18?
I was 18, yes.
18.
Mm-hmm.
So we got him here in Florida, and hopefully he stayed. So how was that experience?
You know, it was amazing. Working for the Ritz-Carlton Company was a major foundation for me. You know, I've worked all the fast food places, you know, McDonald's, Burger King, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell when I was in high school. And culinary school, I'm working at a Jewish deli, you know, so I learned how to work that. Then I worked at a little Italian restaurant, a mom and pop place. It was owned by an attorney. And then I went right to the Ritz right after that, you know. And so the work in the Ritz-Carlton, my first chef I worked under in the kitchen. His name was Roy Koo. He's a Malaysian chef, and he taught me how to. Taught me how to do my first, you know, culinary competition. You know, and garmage is the art of cold food. So I was taking care of club level. You know, I think my orientation lasted me enough time to get my uniform to sign on my paperwork. I was thrown to the kitchen. I'm like, hey, you got fruit to cut for 1,000. Go at it. And I'm like fresh out of culinary school, and so he taught me the core basics and foundation of really of cooking. I mean, that was already established by going to culinary school. Yeah, he'll reinforce that.
That is so fun. So in your book, you write that you love food. So if you were on a desert island, what would be the 4 foods that you just couldn't live without?
Oh gosh, 4 foods. Eggs. I would need to have eggs.
Okay.
I can live on eggs. You know, scrambled eggs, a little hot sauce, some American cheese. Is like a guilty pleasure. I was so young. I only could cook eggs for a long time. So, and then you know, again, food. I relate to food based on memories. You know,
Okay.
and how it connects with people. So I would say my dad's ribs. He made amazing ribs. Whenever I would come home, he would, and if I missed the holidays, he would have saved a slab for me in the freezer, pull it out, and make some fresh potato salad slaw, and then I would have those ribs on a piece of white bread and some sauce, and so that would be one. And then from my mom's fried chicken, you know,
Okay.
and I was very spoiled in the sense that I could eat fried chicken 2 ways. You know, one was right out of the grease. So like I was a big swimmer. I would get home from practice, and she may have already had fried chicken or whatever for the rest of the family, my brother and, you know, my dad or my stepdad, whatever. And then she knew to leave about 4 pieces not fried for me. I would go in, take a shower, get through home, whatever, and then she would put the fried chicken in the grease, and then I would literally wait there. And when it came out, she would dab it on a paper towel. I would have like, you know, spaghetti or a piece of white bread, whatever, and I doused in hot sauce. Like I wanted to smell the hot sauce going through my nostrils as I was eating it. So I could either eat it very hot or like cold, like out of the fridge. Like I would take it, you know, break down the chicken, put on some white bread with some mayonnaise and a little bit of mustard, and I would make a sandwich out of it. So those are probably the 3: eggs, ribs, and chicken.
Okay, sounds good. You write that cooking, is an act of sharing, and it is in that place of generosity that we are all the most humane. You also write that cooking and sharing a meal can often help us make the best of difficult times. So I read in the book where you talked about cooking for Jacksonville first responders during COVID-19. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we're dealing with COVID. A good friend of mine, Scotty Schwartz, who he has El Jefe. At the time he had 29 South back in the main island.
Right.
He called me up one day. He says, "Hey, Kenny," he goes, "Man, I just got this big contract cooking for some of the responders and the swab stations throughout North Florida. Would you help me? Are you available to help me cook some breakfast? It's really early." He says, "I know you're an early guy because I was a swimmer." So we had practice before school.
Sure, yeah.
So I said, yeah, I mean, I would love to. So we worked out a deal. I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, drive to El Jefe, and I would prep breakfast for like 300 people. And so I would do that, and then he would show up. A couple of the other team members would come in and help me pack it after I prepped it all. And then he would load up in a truck, and he would drive it and deliver it off to the different stations throughout North Florida.
That's a giving person.
Yeah.
I'm not a morning person, so. Really good. You also write, cooking isn't a chore, but an experience to be shared with family and friends, and stories are told in kitchens over cooking as much as they are told through cooking. And I think we all can relate that, because if you have a party or you go to your family, everybody always ends up in the kitchen, don't they? You know?
Always
Always ends up in the kitchen. So your book is just full of good stories and good cooking. So let's dig in. This is a new format, a cookbook. We've never done it before. So we're going to go through the chapters. There's 10 of them. We're going to highlight some of them and let you talk about some of the recipes.
All right.
And it's a great cookbook. It's very easy to use. It contains, each chapter will contain a main dish and a side dish that are expertly paired based on flavor and texture. So we're going to start with chapter 1, which is my favorite chapter. It's chicken and biscuits. And you're right that the smell of fried chicken crackling on the stove is love. Combined with warm biscuits and your choice of condiments, you have a dish that reminds us all that some foods just feel like home, and that this dish reminds you of the comfort of home more than any other dish. So I take it, who told you how to fried chicken?
My mom.
Your mom.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. She started off. She had this whole system where she would take the chicken and put, she would wash out the basin of the sink, and she would put the chicken in there, rinse it off really good, maybe squeeze some lemon on it, and then from there she would season it up. And she would take her cast iron skillet, and we always had an old Crisco can that we would save some of that bacon fat and whatnot, and she would put that into the skillet and turn it on a medium heat, medium low, and then she let the chicken season really nice, and then she would throw her flour on and let it kind of get a little tacky, and then from there she would just flicker a little bit of the flour into the skillet with the grease. Once it started to kind of froth up nice, she would put more flour on the chicken, so you kind of create almost this batter on top of the chicken, and then enough of more flour to kind of create the nice crispiness, and then she would slowly put it into the grease and just rotate it like every couple of minutes, and next you know, you have nice fried chicken.
Yes, my favorite part is the skin of that chicken.
Yes.
So a lot of people, biscuits, delicious biscuits. Some people like drop biscuits, and some people like to roll them. Well, what's your favorite?
So I love both styles. The laminated dough is kind of the rolled one where you're taking your very cold butter and you're folding it in, and what happens is those layers of the butter chips that are in there, when it hits a hot oven, then all the water comes out and it expands. That's what helps it rise. And so that's a great biscuit, and I love it. You get really beautiful layers and whatnot. But also, one of my favorite restaurants when I was a little kid, my dad would always say, "Hey, where do you want to go for your birthday?" To me and my brother. My brother used to love to go to a place called the Pacific Pearl, which is a kind of a Polynesian restaurant, and he loved that. But I love seafood. I guess I just got it from my mother. So we would go to Red Lobster, the early days of Red Lobster, and having the cheddar biscuits that they had, those were drop biscuits. And so I was used to having that with some, crab legs or shrimp or whatever. And so I think that, when I was looking at this, I enjoy doing the drop biscuit because it's a little more forgiving. You can kind of layer and add more flavorings into it, and it's easier to make. And so I wanted to make something that you can make really quick, it can store well, and something that you can actually have fun with playing with the flavors.
So, what age were you when you made your first biscuits, and where did you get the recipe?
Every recipe that I cooked from was out of the Betty Crocker cookbook. Like literally, and I wish my mom would have saved it because when I was, I'm a little boy and I'm reading through this book, we would go to the grocery store and I was allowed to pick a recipe and we would buy some of the ingredients. And so I learned out of that book first. And a lot of times she would say, well, you're not going to make that full recipe. You need to make it a half a recipe or a quarter of the recipe. And so as I'm learning math, then I'm breaking down, the fractions and whatnot. And so a lot of my notes were directly in the book. And if my math was off, then I needed to be better at math for that equation. And so, baking is a science. You have to be exact. And so that's where I learned it from.
Yeah. And I would like to poll the audience how many did cook from the Betty Crocker cookbook. I think we all did. So if we find a copy, I'm going to get it to
I would
you.
love that.
Yeah.
I would love that.
So there's two chicken and biscuit recipes that I want to touch on. The first one is called the Flavor Bomb, and it's apparently after Oprah took one bite of this, she declared that it was worth flying you out just for the fried chicken biscuits.
Yes.
So, can you tell us a little bit about the first time you entertained for her and who were there?
God. Well, very first time, a good friend of mine, his name is Sonny Sweetman. We had been friends for years, Ritz-Carlton, our Ritz-Carlton times. We've been in Amelia Island back in '96. And he became her personal chef. And when he got the job, he called me up and said, "Hey, Kenny, you would not believe it. I got this job. I'm cooking for Oprah Winfrey as a personal chef." And I was like, "Get the hell out of here." And then he goes, "Yeah, man." He goes, "But I would love for you to come out. Like, you're a good person. We've been friends for a long time. I appreciate your talent and your abilities. And I would love, as I'm helping do these big gala events, which we're planning to do, to have you out there to help out." I said, "Man, I'm there." And so, very first event was she was entertaining the person that she bought Promised Land from, which is a property in Montecito,
Right.
in Santa Barbara. The person was having their 80th birthday party, and we went out there, cooked this beautiful gala dinner, and then a beautiful brunch, and like Patti LaBelle was there singing happy birthday to him. The next day Aretha Franklin was singing at the gospel brunch. I mean, and so you name the people. Now these were all of his friends and family and whatnot, which were all a lot of the elite. But that was the very first event back in 2014. The next event was for the Selma movie premiere. I cooked for yeah. So when that movie came out, a lot of Freedom Riders they had flown them out there and did a special viewing at the Santa Barbara movie theater, and then we did again. The theme usually always a big gala dinner and then a big beautiful brunch the next day. So we did that. Thanksgiving, I cooked for that year. I cooked for like 5 or 6 different times.
Oh wow!
Earlier part of the year was for the 80th birthday, then Thanksgiving, Selma movie premiere, and then Christmas, and then New Year's Eve. And so yeah.
You like it? The other recipe is the Florida Georgia Boy. And that is, I think, what you served the first responders during COVID. Can you tell us about the origin of the name?
So, Scotty is from Georgia. And it was one day we were talking about biscuits. And again, when you get a bunch of chefs in the kitchen, and even just two of us, we're talking food, we're talking history and whatnot. And he would just talk about how his mom would make these big cat head biscuits, because of the size of the cat's head, or like huge. And he said that one of the things that she would do, as soon as it came out of the oven, she would stuff it with butter and then blackberry preserves. And that's how he grew up eating it. And so when I was thinking about the book, I started thinking about what I was used to having as a kid and what I liked. And I love cane syrup. So a good Alga cane syrup or a Steens, but I grew up eating Alga. So in the book, I wanted to pay tribute to that conversation that I had with Scotty, the fried chicken breast, and I made this cane syrup butter with our buttermilk drop biscuits. And so it was the idea. So as I looked at myself as a Florida boy, being born and raised from a Florida mother, even though I wasn't born and raised down here, I've been down here since I was like 3 months old. And so it was a Georgia boy, so the Florida Georgia boy. That's how the name came about.
That sounds really yummy. So we're going to skip to chapter 3. It's ribs and slaw. And the first recipe is the Carl Anthony St. Louis ribs and Carlotta's creamy slaw.
Yes.
And this is dedicated to your parents.
Yes.
I have a quick little picture. This is his dad, Carl. He's quite debonair. So growing up, your dad had a big Weber grill and an oil drum smoker.
Yes.
So is that who inspired you for your barbecue?
Absolutely. As a little boy, my mom wouldn't allow me or my brother to go outside when he was firing the smoker, because she's like, "Oh, don't have those boys run all that smoke." That was like what she would always say. So I would stand and wait for him like a little puppy dog, in a sense of like he's at the screen door and I would watch him, building his briquettes up and, getting this fire lit. And then once they ash out, kind of, laying them out. And then, he'd have his ribs out or his chicken and let it season up ahead of time and let it get the room temp. And then I just watched him go back and forth, kitchen, smoker on the patio. And so I watched, I paid attention, I observed. And by the time I was, I want to say like 7, he taught me how to cook on my own small little Wilbur grill. And I started cooking like hot dogs and hamburgers. Hot dogs first because they were already fully cooked. So it was like you can char them up, do whatever you want. Because my mom would make sure it was safe. And then I graduated to burgers. She's like, well, make sure you fully cook it, And then as I got older, the degree of difficulty of the proteins, then we get in and make sure it was cooked properly. So I think I went to pork chops next, and steaks. And then I went, like, the last one was chicken because, like, you got to make sure it's fully cooked, So.
I remember growing up with the briquettes, and you don't put the food on till they're like white hot.
That's right. Yeah.
We don't see that anymore. We have our fancy gas grills. Is the flavor different? What do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah. There is no flavor. You're just cooking over gas.
Yeah.
When you're cooking over the briquettes or natural wood, that smoke you're getting to the meat, and it's a huge difference. Like my dad passed away back in '96, and every time I cook in a smoker on the grill, because a smoker is indirect heat, and a grill is direct heat. So a lot of people need to get the terminology correct. And I never cook on a gas grill. I feel like he was looking at me like thumping me in the back of my head. Like, what are you doing? Even in restaurants, I hate cooking on a gas grill. Like when I took my first job when I became chef of the grill room, I was so anti-gas grill. I created my own little makeshift grill with briquettes and different chips, and I cooked all my meats on top of that until I got them to buy me an Aztec grill that was designed out of Texas, and then I wasn't even allowed to do that technically because you need a special hood, and I got in so much trouble all the time. But everyone loved the flavor. No one could deny, and they still have that same Aztec grill that they refurbished over the last 25 plus years in the grill room.
Well, tell me this. When did your dad break down and share his barbecue recipe with you?
So I had become sous chef of the grill room, and he came down to have dinner in the restaurant. I want to say this is 94 or so, because I was in the grill since 93, 93. And he came down and ate, and I remember I made him a dish. It was like a squab dish. It was like squab that was cooked over some coals and grilled nice and smoky. And I made like a little sweet potato salad that was like quenelle perfectly and little pickled vegetables. So it was a very, fancy rendition of that. And I remember, he loved it. And then he pulled out of his jacket, because he was always dressed like head to toe. And he pulled out of his jacket an envelope protector. And he hand wrote his original barbecue sauce recipe on that, and so I still have it. So I've eaten it. I've had it so much. That's what my barbecue sauce is modeled after today. Tomato molasses. Yeah.
Oh, that's such an endearing story. It really is. Chapter 4 is burgers and fries, and you write every American can relate to a burger. Burgers are about family time and vacation, and so many Americans come to Florida on vacation. So tell me how you make the perfect burger all the time.
Well, first you want to start off with good meat.
Okay.
That's the first foundation. You want to have a good fatty burger, a good mix. And I think a 70-30 is ideal for like a good smash burger. For a burger that you're going to patty and grill, I think you need a little bit more of the protein, so like an 80-20 or 81-19 mix is better. And that's why even if you go to Walmart, you'll see, they got certified black Angus, and you'll see, if you look at it, it'll say 70-30, 81-19. That's letting you know the protein mixed to the fat.
Oh, okay.
And usually smash burger, in my opinion, is 70-30. If you're grilling like a nice big juicy burger, then an 81-19 or 80-20 is the better, is the best one. Yeah.
On page 101, we have some chef skills tips. Might have that information in there.
Yeah.
So your signature burger from the Underground Kitchen was called, it was the Smokehouse Burger with sweet potato fries, and it had a pretzel bun. Pretzel bun, you have me because I love pretzels.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you develop this recipe?
So I wanted to have something that that had. I love smoking. I've been cooking on these rubber grills and whatnot, and I wanted to have something that had a good smoky finish. And in Underground Kitchen, actually, we had smokers in the front of the restaurant. It was an old school, like old oil drum kind of look, the same way I used to watch when my dad would cook. And so I wanted to have that flavor throughout the burger. So there's like you have beef and then ground smoked pork belly that's in it. So it's like you're getting your bacon already in it. And so when you cook this burger all the way through, it's so juicy still because you have the pork belly, the smoked pork belly has in the bacon ground in with the beef. And so it's just a great bite. Mm. Yeah, you can't deny it.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Oh, very good. So the next chapter is Gilbert's barbecue chicken with Anna mac and cheese. Everybody loves barbecue chicken, and children always love mac and cheese. So you combine your Chef Kenny's fried chicken and your Chef Kenny's raging Cajun spice to this fried chicken and your Cajun seasonings to this recipe. So, do you want to tell us about your line of spices and how you thought of them and where we can get them?
So yeah, I created my spice blends. I've been working on it my whole life. I mean, I watched my father. He had his own spice blends. He had his own sauce. So that was where the foundation came about. And then as I become a chef, culturally, a lot of spices are relatable to different cuisines. So it's already present, right? And so whenever I cook a dish, if I want to pay a homage to that culture, then I'm gonna make sure it's as authentic as possible. I may have a variation because I might swap out a protein or a vegetable or something like that. But if I'm saying, example, chicken tikka masala, and I'm doing my version of it, then I'm gonna make sure that the authenticity of it, if someone came in that was Indian and had that, they're gonna say that was exactly what it's supposed to be, because I think it's very, very important. So just over the years, I've been constantly just working on different blends. So I have 5 different signature blends right now. I actually have 10, but 5 are launched right now. And we have Raging Cajun, Jerk, Cinnamon Coffee, Moroccan, and fried chicken seasoning. And you can get on Amazon. You can get on chefkennygilbert.com, ebay.com, walmart.com, and also you can try the Silkies, and we have the spices there.
You've got some there.
Yeah.
Well, I might put you on the spot here.
Okay.
All right, so barbecue, there's 4 really major barbecues that are known. We've got the Carolina barbecue, the Memphis barbecue, the Texas barbecue, and the Kansas City barbecue. Mm-hmm. So, have you been trying to develop a style of barbecue that we can call Florida?
I have been. When I opened up Underground Kitchen, that was the foundation. I wanted to really. I started digging into books, a lot of history, and you look at a lot of the books and look at the history of Florida. A lot of times you'll see like these big open fires. You'll see like alligators, strung up, or wild boar, frog legs and different things. And so I remember when I opened up Underground Kitchen, I had 4 or 5 smokers out front. I remember this one gentleman kind of pulled up. He was like, "Oh, you got some of that Fernandina Beach bacon?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he says, "Oh, that's smoked mullet. You don't have any smoked mullet here?" He said, "You gonna do it?" And so we sat and talked for a little bit over a beer while I was cleaning out the smokers. And he was talking about the history of Fernandina and how back in the day he used to cast down a lot. He used to get a lot of this fresh mullet. And there was a gentleman that was out there for years, 20, 30 years, that would smoke a bunch of mullet and sell it for, pennies or whatever, for, pounds of it. And so I said, okay, cool. So I contacted my fishmonger, Atlantic Seafood at the time, and I said, hey, can I get some mullet? And he goes, he said, we don't really get mullet around here. No one buys it. I said, well, I want to start doing it at the restaurant. So we worked out a deal, and he had someone that was fishing for it down in Tampa and would bring it all the way up. And so I put it on the menu, and I called it Fernandina Beach Bacon. And so I would take the mullet, do a simple little cure with my chicken seasoning, brown sugar, and some salt. You put it on the fish for, like 20 minutes, rinse it off, and you will hot smoke it for maybe 10, 12 minutes. Right. Then let it cool down because the mullet has so much oil in it. It was like how you would see like a pork belly or bacon, so we call it Fernandina Beach Bacon. So for me, that's the foundation of starting Florida barbecue, because you're smoking it,
Right, yeah.
So smoked fish, your smoked fish dips, which is what we had. Very, very Florida. I also did a lot of frog legs, alligator. I was known for doing whole gators and a lot of gator ribs. I was buying, 200, 150, 200 pounds of alligator ribs a week. And it's funny, like I would sell it by the pound, and so a slab, they were coming from about 4.5 to 5 foot gators. So each slab of ribs were about a pound and a half, maybe two if it was a bigger gator. And I sold so much, and everyone loved it. And so that was the foundation. I had frog legs, I had the mullet, I had the gator. And even when I was doing events all around the country, everyone knew me as doing the gator. And I would come out and I would brine whole gators and smoke them on these big pits, and everyone would have their phones out taking videos of what I was doing. And every time, the only thing that was left were the feet and the head.
Oh, wow. That is so
they ate
interesting.
it, like all of it, and everyone loved it. It was always the top thing at the end of the event.
Yeah, instead of a pig, we have alligator.
Yeah.
Well, we really like a Florida barbecue because Texas is very jealous because we're the only embassy in Washington, D.C., and they're just dying to get a embassy there. So, fish and grits. You write, a crispy fried protein pairs well with a creamy gratin. And I believe this is your grandmother's Della, is that her name, taught you how to fish in St. Augustine?
Absolutely, yeah. She loved to fish, and she loved to go on the golf course. And so whenever I would come down, she would take me and my brother and some other cousins. We just go out fishing and be out there all day. And then whatever fish we caught, we would take it back to her house. We would clean it, and then she would fry it up and make some grits and some fried green tomatoes. She grabbed some tomatoes from the garden, slice them up, soak them in some buttermilk, dredge them up, fry them. And so for me, that combination is just, it's comforting.
Yeah. And you mentioned that your mom, when you lived in the cold Cleveland winters,
Yes,
would fix that for breakfast and dinner.
absolutely.
So, sounds really good. So another local chef here is Matthew Majors. You said he was a mentor. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah,
How he influenced you?
absolutely. I was working in I was doing my tour throughout the Ritz Carlton, and Matthew happened to be on vacation, and I had just put my notice in. I was hoping to get promoted to be a cook one. I put the work in, and I felt like they weren't going to give me an opportunity. So I put my notice in, and I was going to work at River City Brewing Company under Tim Felver. He was the executive chef. That's when it was booming at 500-600 covers a night.
Yeah.
I was going in there working part-time, and he offered me the executive sous chef position. I was 19, and so I built a relationship with Tim, and then anyway, Roy prevented me from taking that job. He called me. It was like my last day of my notice. He says, Kenny, I can't let you go. He's like, you need to go work with Matthew. I think Matthew would be a great mentor to you. They're kind of hanging off the baton from what he did with me in Garmier and in the cafe. He says, Matthew's coming back from vacation. I want you to sit down with him. I want you to take this job. And he says, well, you at least talk to him. That's a lot of talk to him. And I sat down with Matt because I was already going in there helping on my own time, help tornado vegetables, clean sweetbreads, and just kind of help doing prep work for free. So he offered me the position of cook one. So I got my promotion, and I went over there. I worked in the cafe. I worked on the Garmier station, the pantry, and I was on that station for like 2 weeks. And then later on, Matthew promoted me to saute very quickly thereafter. And then really the rest is history. I became a sous chef, cooked for the AAA inspectors when I was like 20. I guess it was like 2021 when the inspectors came in. So in '94. We got the award in '94. It came out in '95, and then I was Matt's sous chef for that whole time. When he left to open up Matthew's right across the street, he wanted me to become his exec chef to open the restaurant because I felt like he taught me everything that he could and that he wanted to. He didn't leave anything left for me to learn. If he knew it, he was sharing it, and so we built a really great bond and relationship. And so I did not leave the Grove to go work with him. I was promoted as a chef. I was 23 years old, and it's because of the faith that he had in me and the training.
just so interesting. So young, guys. Oh, it's amazing. Um, the next two chapters, one is seafood boils and collards and cornbread. And I love the fact that you have recipes in them for like a seafood boil. I think of the classic Southern seafood boil. But you've got a Korean inspired, Italian inspired, Thai inspired, and French inspired. I thought that was just fascinating.
Yes.
But you mentioned that Jacksonville is full of little restaurants and shacks throughout the city that are known for seafood boils that feature garlic crabs. And you say that your grandmother taught you how to crab in St. Augustine.
Yeah.
So is that the influence that you got for your recipe for your Southern seafood?
So, my second wife was addicted to like garlic crabs. That was my first real love for it, and so that's where I learned about it. My current wife, she like I wanted to put it on the menu, and I made a version of it, and then she said she came and tried it. She was like, that's not it yet, and I was like, what do you mean? This is delicious. And she was like, no, I'm telling you. And she was like a seafood, a crab aficionado as well. And so I tweaked the recipe and then got it down to where it was perfect. So I feel like, my grandmother, she would take some old chicken legs and let it get rotten, and then she would go out with these crab traps and then put it in there. And the next thing you know, we had a whole big old crab trap full of crabs. And so I learned how to crab from her. And I remember taking a piece of chicken and throwing it out there on a string and then kind of luring the crab in when you're playing as a kid. But then I learned how to, by eating them, and then by, again, these two women that basically were like addicted to it, I learned about it.
That's so fun. And a good Southern seafood boil is so good for a big crowd. Everybody loves that.
Absolutely.
So, and you write, if you live near the ocean, you have two things on hand, seafood and water, and that a steaming pot of well-seasoned seafood is always a crowd pleaser.
Absolutely.
So, collards and cornbread. So if you're from the South, the tradition on New Year's Day is you got to have your cornbread and your collards for good luck and for prosperity. So, who taught you about making collards and cornbread?
My mother, Thanksgiving, she didn't make it all the time, but like Thanksgiving and then obviously for New Year's, she would always have it ready to go. And she made, the collards was always my favorite. She would take smoked ham hocks, make a really nice stock or pot liquor. She would add a little bit of apple cider vinegar, a little bit of crushed pepper, home Southern food all the time. And I remember we used to talk about college all the time, and we talked about mother's milk, and that was a tag for our smoked ham hock stock at the property. So I've just kind of kept that along with it because I would take ham hocks, say a 40-pound case of ham hocks, put it in these big pans, top it with water, wrap it in a lot of plastic wrap, and I would put it in the oven overnight, really slow. Let it cook all night, and then in the morning we would come in, poke a hole in that plastic, and then pour off that broth, like that consomme, and the whole kitchen would just smell like beautiful smoked ham hock. Then you would remove all the bones, take all that fat and everything, and chop it up, and that would go into the pot. And with your onion, and then I throw in a couple cinnamon sticks, and which is a secret to my recipe. It really just perfumed it just beautifully, and so that's where my collards come from. Yeah, the cornbread. That same skillet, my mom would fry the chicken in. She would make the cornbread in that, and so she would do a hot water cornbread, which is really popular. So you literally just take a pound of cornmeal and some flour and a little bit of sugar and some salt, pepper or whatever. If you want to put bacon or cheddar, and then you pour hot water on there, and then you kind of fry it. You put it in a hot skillet, and it rises really quick. That hot water hydrates it. So it saves a step. If you think about it, if you're mixing everything with the cornmeal and everything is cold, then you put it in the skillet, it's gonna take time to come up. If you put in something the hot water in there, it basically activates all the leavening very quickly, and it rises up and it cooks a little bit faster. And you can also cook it in the skillet. You know, some people call it Johnny cakes. Very similar to almost like an arepa. If you just take it and patty it down and pan fry it in some bacon fat or lard. Yeah.
Now, I've never heard of putting hot water in.
Oh yeah.
That's so interesting. Mm-hmm. And you gave your secret away, the cinnamon stick.
Yeah.
So the last chapter that we're going to cover, and I'm looking for the page here, is my second favorite, and it's about cakes and pies. So, here we go. I'm getting flustered here. Where is it? There you go. You write that berries, citrus, and spices are the three things you enjoy most in desserts. So we want to highlight the first one, I think, is the Florida citrus cake.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What about that? What was your inspiration for that?
So my mother used to make the first cake I ever learned how to make was a lemon sour cream pound cake. And that was that was her foundation. If she made a cake, that was it. And so I love citrus. Like just growing up, like I could take a lemon and cut it open and just suck on the lemon and enjoy it. And so I wanted something that really just spoke to Florida. And so I kind of came up with this name as Florida citrus cake, which, you know, it's not hard. I mean, citrus is grown here. I wanted to make something that was sweet and focusing on Florida. And so I put together this really nice cake that actually uses lemon, lime, and orange juice. You can use ricotta cheese or sour cream, and basically self-rising flour, some vanilla, some sugar, some eggs, a little bit of oil, and it's a very, very simple cake. And to make there's a citrus buttercream, which is really a cream cheese frosting. So it's equal parts butter, cream cheese, and shortening with powdered sugar, lemon, lime, and orange zest, some vanilla. And then we take sugar and we add a lot of lemon, lime, and orange zest into the sugar, and mix it together. So this cake, you have this really citrusy cake that's really moist. Then you have this beautiful buttercream that has a citrus in it, and then you have this little sugar crumble on top. So you're eating it, you get the little crunch of the sugar, and you're just getting citrus throughout it. To me, it just is Florida.
Oh, it sounds quite yummy, quite yummy. So some other names are Spanish hot chocolate cake, and guava duck cake.
Yes.
That fascinated me because guavas are so. I think people generally don't really know that much about guavas, so I'm going to be curious about making that one. Mm-hmm. And then you talk about your Della sweet potato pie.
Yes.
So when did you have that? Was that always at Thanksgiving?
You know, it was whenever we would come down. My grandmother was my grandmother Della was diabetic, and so she was always cooking a full meal. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks. It was always from start to finish. And so when we would come down to visit, she would always make a sweet potato pie. That was like kind of her signature. And then she would make the sweet potato turnovers. So whatever dough she had, pie dough she had left, she would take the leftover filling as well, and she made like these little ham pies and bake them off. And so before we would even leave, she would give out the kids a little bag of the sweet potato pies. And before we even got out of the parking lot, the driveway, like we were already eating those after we already had a full meal. And so that was the first pie I made. Actually, my uncle taught me how to make my first pie dough and how to make her sweet potato pie. He was in the military. He was at Fort Bragg, and he would come up to Cleveland when he had time off and break because my mom was the oldest sister, and he was the youngest boy. And he would come up, and she really helped raise him. And so one day I was thinking about my grandmother's pie, and he was, "Oh, I'll make it. I'll show you how to make it." And he made it, and he showed me, and that was my first one I learned how to make.
It sounds so lovely. Well, aren't you hungry?
I am.
What a sweet time you've had. You sharing your journey and learning all about your love for food and others. And I'd like to close tonight's program with you reading an excerpt from your book. It's a really great one. I love it.
No matter what time of year or occasion, dessert is a treat, and treats are the best shared. The recipes in this chapter make more than one cake or pie. Even though it's a little unusual, I did this on purpose. I encourage you to bake, not just for yourself, but to friends or families members who may need something sweet to brighten their day. There's nothing better than receiving an unexpected dessert from someone who cares. It is a small act of love and a way to make life better. Nothing says love like a warm pie or decadent cake.
That's right. What a great thought for that. So I'm going to open it up for questions for Kenny. You get a treat if you ask a question.
What inspired you to do the current champagne, the Silkies and Champagne? I'm saying that right?
Yeah, Silky's Chicken and Champagne
Yeah.
Bar. What inspired it was I wanted to do a fast casual concept, and really the chicken and biscuits. Ms. Winfrey had called me one September. We were trying to figure out what concept we were going to do, and we found the space. We were living in Springfield, and we were like, oh, what do we put in this space? And I already knew the space really felt very casual to me. And when she called me, she had me selling this bet on when the first time she ever had my chicken and biscuits, and and so once I got on the phone, I was like, we're opening Silky's, we're gonna open this restaurant, and it's gonna be based on chicken and biscuits. And then we started looking for the name. I wanted to have a name that was relatable to like a heritage breed of chicken, and a Silky is a heritage breed. It's actually a Chinese breed of chicken. It actually has a black pigment and skin. And over in China, I was over in Japan, and I worked at an authentic Chinese restaurant. And a gentleman came in and had brought in some fresh ginseng root, and he gave it to the master chef. And he ended up doing this beautiful multi-course dinner. And one of the things he did was this clay pot Silky chicken, where he put in the ginseng root and like some dates and cilantro stems and different things, and it made this really beautiful broth from that chicken. And so the bird is a very beautiful bird. And I was like, oh, this would be the perfect name because there's nothing out there like it.
Very. All right. I don't know if you've been to Silky's, but he has quilt patterns. So what was I've been in Paducah, they have the quilt museum, and it's lovely. Mm. So I love quilts. So what was the inspiration for those?
So the print that's in the book, a friend of mine, one of my best friends, his name is Ray Eugenio. He's actually from the Philippines, but lived in Jacksonville. His dad was in the military, and he married his lovely wife Julie, who was a teacher. And when I opened up Underground Kitchen, the gift that they gave me was this little plaque, and it actually had the print of two different patchworks. And behind it, behind the frame, and it says from Julie and Ray and the kids, and it tells a story. It was based on the Underground Railroad when Harry Tubman was helping free the slaves to go north. Quilts were that certain patchwork was used as code. So as you're fleeing north, basically one may have been like, okay, you can stop here and get tools. You can stop here, and here's a patchwork. This is where you can get food. This is where you can this is your pathway to get to Canada, where you can actually get the crossroads. And so I thought it was a beautiful story, and I started digging into it. I was really appreciative that she actually taught me about that, because I didn't know. And so the restaurant, Underground Kitchen, the name stood for pop-up and supper clubs, because that's what I had started off doing when I was looking to open my first restaurant. And she took it a little bit deeper and basically really helped educate on some history. And so it keeps me grounded and reminded of how far we've come.
Anyone else? So how are you going to celebrate Black History Month? Oh, excuse me.
I love Silkies, but I heard about the gator. It may not meet your menu at Silkies, aside from trying to do it on my own, which I won't be able to do. Mm-hmm. Where can we get some of that gator?
Yeah.
Mayport? No, not Mayport Fisheries. It's called Beacon now. They changed the name, but they used to. It's a spot. I'm trying to think exactly where. But if you go to your local fishmonger, they have the connections, and if you tell them what you want, they'll bring it in.
No. What I
mean, your gator.
Oh, me? Oh,
yeah.
I don't have a smoker. My dream is to open up a restaurant that I can feature moonshine, bourbon, and whiskey cocktails and celebrate all things Florida.
Yeah.
You know, that is something that I want to do. That's a dream. It's gonna happen, and then when that does happen, trust me, you will have it there.
Yeah.
So, how are you going to celebrate? Oh, we got another question.
Oh, you can
Go
ask the
ahead.
question first. So I was at the event at the JCA where you provided food. There was a speaker about Jewish ancient texts,
Mm-hmm.
and it was your brisket was one of the best briskets I can remember having.
Thank you.
So my question is like, do you make that anymore?
Well, you know, it's funny, that brisket, I learned it. When I worked for the Ritz-Carlton, I was at one point I worked for the Ritz-Carlton in Jupiter, Florida. And I created a kosher catering company for the Ritz-Carlton. And after I did that, I was working with Temple Beth David. I studied with two rabbis, one Orthodox, one conservative. Ate at a Shabbat dinner and got hammered doing shots of vodka after every prayer. But I was recruited by Bal and Isles, one of the largest Jewish clubs in the state. And my first day, a woman came and I hadn't even put my laptop down in my office. I didn't know where it was at yet. And she stopped me. She was like, and I can't remember her name, but she was like, I'm gonna be your best friend here. I'm gonna tell you all the key things you need to learn to be successful in this club. And I had already created this kosher catering company, so that's when they recruited me, because I did it at Temple of Davis, made a lot of money, and they knew I knew how to cook the food at a very high level. But she sat me down and told me how to make brisket, and how she did, because she owned a catering company up in D.C.
Yeah.
For like 70 years, and now she's retired. And so we talked latkes and simmis and gefilte fish and matzo ball soup, and the key was the brisket. And she taught me she said, this is how she's like, you know how to sear, you know how to braise, but this is what you put in it that is going to connect, and everyone's going to love it. And the ingredients she put, was like ginger snap cookies, chili sauce, applesauce, mirepoix, French onion soup mix. And when it braised, I'm telling you, once it's done and you let it cool down in the liquid, the next day you take the liquid, whatever, you heat it up, you puree it, you strain it, and then you break down the brisket and you slice it and trim it and have it in a pan. It's got sauce over it, and you let it heat up real slow. It's magic. It's magic.
It was.
Any other?
So what is your next cookbook, Kenny? This is your first one. You say in the book you have 10 in you. So what one's going to come?
Oh my gosh. I want to do one specifically on sides. I think that everyone is always having some kind of gatherings. Like, oh, what can I take? Not just mac and cheese. It's like really, really good sides. I mean, I haven't even touched on, field peas, and a lot of other casseroles and different things. And so I want to take the core foundation of sides and expand it, because I think it'll be something. I want to do it where it's like pocket size. Like if you're, not only you can have it, on a Kindle or something like that, but to me, I think it's something special about having the book with you, having something you can put notes in when something that will fit in your purse, or in a back pocket where you can go and go to the store. You can kind of go through it and your shopping list, and you can put it together. So that would probably be the next one that I would put my, set my boat in that I want to do.
Very good. Well, thank you, Kenny, for sharing your colorful and meaningful origins of your recipes. And we want to thank Desiree Bailey and the wonderful folks. And we want the viewers who are watching that the next book club will be at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, April 2nd, at the Palm Beach Bookstore, featuring Reef Road by author Deborah Goodrich Royce. And make sure to follow Florida House on Capitol Hill. We're on Instagram, Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and the web at www.floridahousedc.com. I want to thank all the people from Florida House, our trustees here in Jacksonville who attended, especially to Mary Bebout. She came from Tallahassee, and she helped script everything that I wrote.
Yes.
Yes, if you